Well, I'd be excited if the Space Pirates was getting animated. But, yeah, as I mentioned, if the Space Pirates was found, or if it was getting animated, I'd be excited, even if it's the worst story of all time. So, I'm still excited for stories that are missing, that I wouldn't particularly be fond of getting animated or reanimated. So, say, if the Space Museum was missing and that was animated, then I'd be happy for that, even though it's not one I'm particularly fond of. So, before we enter this review, I just want to say that if any missing episode or story was found or reanimated, then I'd be happy to see it back, even if I'm not so keen on the story. With that being said, the Macra Terror. Hello ladies and gentlemen, Nick here, and welcome to my review of Doctor Who, The Macra Terror, which is completely missing, and therefore I cannot flash a DVD up. However, it is getting reanimated, and will be released on DVD and Blu-ray, and Steelbook Blu-ray at the end of next month. At time recording, it's early February, not sure when it's going out. So, with that being said, I'll be definitely trying to get my hands on all 3 copies, a copy of all 3. At some point, and I'll be doing a review on the main channel about the new version at some point. However, in the meantime, we've got to do in order with the retro channel, and we're now at this point for that. So here's my initial thoughts on the story before we get to the new animated version. And before we do, just have to say this is one they wanted to do animate. This is the one they wanted to animate next. Sounds like some tricky stuff to animate, but then again, can't be more tricky than 24 characters, character voices, like they mentioned about the Crusade. I read an article about that after Power of the Daleks. One of them said that one of the animators said they'd like to do the Crusade, but then there's 24 speaking roles in it, in 1 or 2 of the episodes, 1 or both of the missing episodes. But that being said, there's less characters to do the facial voices, but hopefully the characters aren't going to have still monotone faces for when they're not doing anything. There was a little bit with that with Power of the Daleks, but it was mostly with the Planet 55 ones that we mostly got characters just standing looking, their kind of smiley faces just still. Anyway, as for the story itself, I didn't enjoy this one. I really didn't enjoy this one. Didn't really enjoy it the first time I watched the reconstruction back in spring of 2018, when I was doing checking out the missing episodes with the reconstructions in May and June, and maybe a little bit of April, maybe for Marco Polo, but a little bit of April, May and June of 2018, between series 10 and 11, I was checking out the reconstructions of the missing episodes that I hadn't seen yet, with the DVDs to help get me through them, like Lost in Time over here, which is going to need to be flashed later on. But I wasn't the biggest fan of it when I watched it then, and now I've rewatched it and I'm like, it's not that good. I mean, the story idea is interesting, and it's got some nice ideas, but I just don't enjoy the story. As some dick characters, Ola is a notable one. I really, really wanted somebody to turn around and say, "Shut up, Ola." But alas, nobody did. He's a prick. The controller's not too bad. He comes better later on, but then everyone goes, not the controller, the pilot. Controller's somebody else. I'll get back to him in a second, but the pilot is okay, but then he decides to check out the Doctor, and then he's like, ooh, public enemy number 4, after the Dr. Ben not Ben, Polly and Jamie. Jamie, then Polly. Ben, I suppose, becomes public enemy number 5 because he's been brainwashed into following the same ways as the colonists. But throughout the story, it's kind of diminishing a little bit. And in part 4, it's almost gone. And then halfway through, he's out of the way. And he actually tells the controller voice to shut it. Props for him. Ben's redeemed himself after his little experience as a brainwashed goon in this episode. I think this must be the first time any of the Dodo in War Machines and then Polly. Okay, this is the only time Ben's been brainwashed. I was going to say it's the first time any of the companions have been brainwashed, but we already had that in the War Machines. A much better story by Ian Stewart Black, based on a story by Kit Pedler, so maybe that was helpful. Yeah, I would consider Ian Stewart Black the 60s equivalent to Malcolm Hulke, because Malcolm Hulke, he wrote a couple of stories where I just, mainly in John Pertwee's era. I think he's doing the Faceless ones, which is the next story, and that's a good one. That's one of his better ones. Then he co-writes the War Games. I'm not the biggest fan of that, but it's good. Co-wrote that with Terrence Dicks, and then he does Doctor Who and the Silurians, which I'm not the biggest fan of. Then he co-writes, uncredited on screen, with David Whittaker and Trevor Way, the Ambassadors of Death, which is great. Then he does Colony in Space, which is shit. Then he does The Sea Devils, which may actually be his best story out after the Faceless ones and his part in Ambassadors. Then he does Frontier in Space, which everybody loves, but I don't. And he does Invasion of the Dinosaurs, which is okay. I haven't watched that one in a while, though. I'll give that a rewatch when we get to the end of John Pertwee's era. But Frontier in Space I've only watched once, but I know that's not for my taste. I'd rather stick with Planet of the Daleks. As for the other ones, I've seen a few times, apart from War Games, which I've seen once, and Faceless ones, which should be next for a rewatch. Anyway, so Malcolm Hulke is not really my particular favourite writer, but I will say his scripts seem to be better than Ian Stewart Black. Ian Stewart Black did The Savages, and I didn't really enjoy that, and I don't really enjoy this. He did manage to hit it out the park with the War Machines, but maybe that was partly due to Kit Pedler's idea, but Ian Stewart Black then made the story work. So I suppose that's the way. But then again, like I said, Malcolm Hulke did some good stories alongside ones I'm not fond of. And fun fact, he actually got to write a story for every John Pertwee season, which is 5. Plus, if you add his co-write on the War Games, that's 6 in a row. And like Robert Holmes, there's only a 1-story gap in between his next one. Robert Holmes, I will say, like Russell T Davies and Stephen Moffat and a couple of other new series writers, is a bit of a mixed bag overall. We're going to start off with a good one, then we're going to be followed by an absolute shit one, and then we're going to have an absolutely fantastic one, and so on from there. So, yeah, but that's enough about the writers. We'll get back to Robert Holmes when we get to Season 6. And Malcolm Hulke, next time, I think, if he does the Faceless one, I think he does. If not, then when we get to the War Games. But I think he does the Faceless ones. Now, there was something I said I was going to get back to. The Controller, that's it. The Controller. The cliffhanger for Part 2. They demand to see the actual Controller. They see a picture of a guy, and they hear his voice, but they demand to actually see the Controller, the proper Controller. So they decide to show him a feeble old man who looks nothing like the picture. Maybe it was him when he was younger, but once he start, and even they know that he's under some kind of control, and he's asked, like, am I allowed to speak? Yes, I will speak, I'll tell them. And then a Macra claw comes at him for some reason. What is going on? Okay, for starters, if you don't want to expose yourselves, don't show the controller, the real controller. Show a fake controller, the guy who looks like the picture and has that voice, I suppose. Or at least some guy who looks like him, but it's actually an image, a faked image, and it looks like, that image is faked. And then the controller has them sent to the pits for trying to spread danger. And then later on we see the Macra working the picture and voice controls and the false image inducer. That could have worked. Alternatively, you could have just not had the Macra's claw have it come out at the controller, and they've said, tell controller, you just say, I am the controller, I run this colony, okay, you've seen me, goodbye. End of. The cliffhanger was just to confirm the Doctor, Jamie and Polly's suspicions about the Macra and have them thrown into the caves, but it was really badly executed. And just the Macra just having a claw come out at the guy whilst the video's on screen, yeah. You're trying to hide that there's no Macra. Say there's no Macra, there's no such thing as Macra. And yet one of the claws is coming at the controller for everybody to clearly see it. Of course, all the obedient people don't know or don't take any notice and just have the ones who did notice thrown into the pits. But still, it's not, I mean, they must have seen something, but like with Ben, they just snapped out of it as soon as they got away from it. But everything just happens so quickly and it just doesn't work. They're really getting very close to exposing it. They did expose themselves. It's just that the fact that they were just luck on the Macra's part that the obedient humans just didn't pay attention and just decided, fuck it, throw them into the pits, I've had enough of this. Oh, worst cliffhanger for a good long time, at least. I mean, there's been some weak ones so far, but this was a really bad cliffhanger. It sucked. And I don't think the animation is going to fix it, because there should have been something in the middle. Maybe the controller should have said or done something that would have revealed the Macra's presence there, besides double checking if he's okay to talk. But he said, okay, I'll talk. I'll do what you say. And then a claw comes at him. And unless it's the Macra actually saying, okay, let's give these guys a glimpse of us, then Ola and the pilots can have them chucked into the pit. Okay, snap, snap, snap. Don't even know if the controller's alive anymore. Well, the old man controller, anyway, we don't even know if he's survived that encounter with the Macra. So, I mean, he could be dead for all we know. So, yeah, and another person someone they do get rid of, what's his face? Marek? Something. The guy that they meet early on. He died in part 3. That's a shame. He was a fun presence on screen. It would have been nice to see him survive till the end. At least the likeable characters in the Underwater Menace made it all the way to the end. Then again, they came in episode 2, so... Well, 2 of them did. One of them came in episode 1. The sets are okay, but it's just... I don't know, they're just trying to make up for some of the stories, just not that interesting half the time. The idea of the pumping the gas out to be the food for the Macra sounds good, but doesn't really go anywhere until the end. It's supposed to be a gas mining colony, but until we realise that's what the Macra need to survive and make them stronger, it's left in the dark for a surprise or a revealment, I suppose, but it's not really used that much. I honestly would have liked to have seen a bit more of the colony. We got a glimpse in part 1, but I would have liked to have been expanded on the colony or expanded on what they were doing, or their rotors. Something like what we saw in the Savages, started to see in the Savages, but didn't see much of it. We saw a bit of it, but not much. Here we see even less. We see a couple people dancing the street. Fun fact, the drummer woman in part 1 actually gets a credit before all 3 companions. I'm not sure about part 4, but certainly in part 1, the drummer woman at the start of part 1 gets a credit before the first 3 companions. This is why credits with the companions, not 2nd, 3rd, 4th example, is a bad thing. Why do you think they fixed that for John Pertwee's era? It's been more of a thing since they updated it a little bit, so it's not to its part 1, part 2 stories now, instead of individual title episodes. But so once they updated the end credits, the names have always been a bit all over the place after the Doctors have gone past. So thankfully they fix it for Jon Pertwee's. But yeah, I would have liked, like I said, I would have liked to have seen more of the colony, less of Ola and the guards and all this shit that's going on in episodes 2, 3, and 4. I mean, the mining stuff isn't too bad. I'll give them that. It's not too bad. I would have liked to see maybe try a little bit more. Then again, we already had some mines in Underwater Menace. We're doing mines again. Excuse me, I've got some voices. When's the next time we do mines? There's underground bunkers in Enemy of the World. There's tunnels in the Web of Fear. That's the underground. Might be some caves in the Bonald Snowman. Trying to work out when the next mines or quarry mines are. Might be the Monster of Peladon. I'm probably wrong. There's caves and tunnels before then, but mines. Well, if it's the Monster of Peladon, then that's season 11 and the penultimate story of that. But then there's only 5 of those, whilst there's 9 of these, and we're on number 6, 7. No, we're on number 7. That's okay. That's not too bad then. Yeah, I think it's probably the Monster of Peladon. There's mines in the Green Death. Okay, that's the end of season 10. That's just a little bit more before. Okay, season 10 is the next time we'll see some mines. And then actually seeing people mining in season 11. So anyway. But yeah, those were alright. It's just that there wasn't enough of them. There wasn't enough scenes. The bit with Jamie in the tunnel, that was actually pretty tensionous. I'll give him that. But it just went on a little bit too long before they got to the cliffhanger. So, and then again, afterwards, I do think the controlling of Ben was a good way to go down his character. He doesn't do a huge amount of it halfway through, though, and apart from uncertain of his loyalties. But in the earlier parts, it makes a bit of sense. And then he loses his afterwards, which is good. And yeah, also the songs they sing in this story. Well, then it's not the last chance saloon, and they're not on repeat. There's 1 or 2 songs that are played a few times across the story, and some songs. It's not many. There's a couple. Some of them are played a few times. There's the one that the singers are singing. They sing that about 3 times, but it makes sense. They're in a kind of a practice session, and you get to see Jamie try and do a little dance, trying to escape, but then recaptured in the 3rd version. And you get to hear them putting a bit more effort into the 2nd and 3rd. So that's not too bad. And actually that helps expand on the colony stuff, even though the sudden cut to it is a bit, okay, we're looking at these people now. And then we find out Jamie's escape routes comes through there, so that makes sense. Afterwards, it might have been better if we heard them. From Jamie's point of view, he opened the cupboard and then we cut to them singing and Jamie looking out, and then they came to part 2. It's the 2nd version, and Jamie's just uncertain where he was going, and then he was called over for the dance. Oh well, at least we got something decent though. And finally, to wrap up the title sequence, finally we finally got to the Patrick Troughton title sequence. Yes, but the William Hartnell theme tune, the 1963 theme, plays for some reason over the opening titles for this episode, these episodes, and also for the first episode of the Faceless ones. It's not going to be until episode 2 that we'll finally get the 1967 theme. So the Patrick Troughton titles can play in their full entirety properly. And I think there's a slight variation to the end theme at the end. I think they might just play the same version of the end theme until the War Games Part 10 and then change it up for Jon Pertwee's. Although a William Hartnell version does play in parts 4 and 5 of The Web of Fear at the end of that story. Not sure why. Yeah, once they get to Jon Pertwee's, they'll make sure everything is spick and spat. And also a version of the Hartnell theme plays at the end of the 2017 Shada, but as that's the last time that version of the theme is played chronologically, excluding the Day of the Doctor, then it makes sense. And that's on the 2017 version. On the original version, it would have been the normal Tom Baker one from 73, 74. So I'm not sure why they did that, but at least we get to listen to we get to see the new title sequence, and they look nice. The Patrick Troughton title sequences looks great. It's just a shame we haven't got the new theme yet, which is a nice, slightly better version of the Hartnell version. I do like the Hartnell titles a lot. I think they're great, and I love the theme. But we've had 4.5 seasons of this title sequence. People who get a bit fed up with the 2005 and 2007 Chris Eccleston and David Tennant title sequences. And also the fact there's also quite a lot of the 1974 Tom Baker ones as well, but there's quite a lot of those ones with Tom Baker's 74 to 80 title sequence and theme, but there's even more with the 1963 to 67 titles, and even more if you continue the theme for 5 episodes before you get the new theme alongside the new titles. I actually calculated it to be about in the 170s, 180s, whilst Tom Baker's was 144, excluding Shada, which would have been 145 for the movie, the 2017 version, or 150 for the planned, completed, and the 1992 linking versions, or 151 total. I think the Hartnell ones were 172, 182-ish, plus an extra 5 for the theme. So, yeah, the 1963 titles are given to the most episodes. I think, I got kind of fed up with these titles and themes. I loved them, but I got kind of a bit fed up during season 3, to be honest. In fact, maybe even during season 2. I'm looking forward to... I was actually kind of getting a bit tired of them, and kind of getting a bit tired of the first couple of seasons, despite me enjoying William Hartnell and his season and his titles and music. I was kind of getting restless for Patrick Troughton, and still got another bloody episode of that theme. I mean, I love the theme, but I want to hear Patrick Troughton's theme with his title sequence. And we don't get that here, and we don't get it in the first episode of Faceless Ones. We have to wait till the second episode. Drat. How rubbish! That's the cyber leader in the Aimless Wanderings audio, Dr. Cube, says. And we don't even get that much with the Patrick Troughton theme. We get 2 seasons plus another 12 episodes from season 4 plus 5 more episodes with the titles, and then John Pertwee's one takes over for 4 seasons, actually. He gets a new one for season 11 for some reason, trying to prototype the 4th Doctor's one, I suppose, and then his carries on till his penultimate season. Then we get a brand new one for his last, and then I guess that was trying to, again, prototype the 5th Doctor's. We get that until the end of season 21. Then we get Collins for the last story for his first adventure, and then for the next 2 stories, although changing theme for Trial of a Time Lord. Then we get the McCoy theme, which is brilliant, and it was only used was so underused. I mean, so was Collins, to be honest. Both ones were underused on screen. Then we get the TV movie one, which is fantastic. Then we've got 2005 to 7 theme and titles, which runs from Rose to Last of the Time Lords, with a bit of more brightness in this, from Runaway Bride, Smith and Jones to Last of the Time Lords. Then a new faster paced one for Voyage of the Damned, Partners in Crime, To the End of Time. And then 2 Matt Smiths, we got the 2010 and 11 version, plus the 2012, the 5/2012 episode. We got the standard version for 2010 to 11, and then the first 5 episodes of Series 7, they've got their own personal ones, and then the Snowmen which kind of got its personal titles card, and then Bells St. John's on the Woods kind of got the standard one. New standard one, I should say. And then that ran to Time of the Doctor, with the exception of the reuse of the Hartnell one for Day of the Doctor. Then we got a nice Peter Capaldi one. They finally kept, thankfully with Peter Capaldi's Doctor, they stuck with that same title sequence and same theme tune. They kind of changed it, the titles themselves a little bit in Series 10, but the sequence itself was pretty much the same for the entirety of Capaldi's run, making him and the most consistent Doctor to have a title sequence like that, alongside Eccleston. Eccleston and Capaldi, the most consistent title sequences since the end of the classic series. Possibly since Tom Baker, even, because of the short use of Colin Baker and Sylvester McCoy's one. Colin Baker said it wasn't quite consistent with the theme. Peter Davison, arguably, I suppose, actually. So, actually, yeah, Capaldi was probably the most consistent since Peter Davison. And then we got the brand new one with Jodie Whittaker. Makes sense. Although, would have liked to have seen a title card on The Woman Who Fell to Earth and the Resolution. Anyway, so that's themes and title sequences out of the way. But like I said, I do love the William Hartnell version. But we're on to Patrick Troughton stories now. I'm getting a bit tired of it. Can we just get Patrick Troughton's ones out now? We've got the titles now, but just the theme tune. One more episode, and then we'll finally get it on the next one. About time. Okay, so back to the story. The Macra Terror isn't that fun. It's not that great. It's a bit of a slow... well, it's not that slow, but it's just not that enjoyable. It feels like it's taking its time. And it actually isn't, which is actually bad. That could be just as bad as ones that do take their time and feel like it. No, this one doesn't take its time, but it feels draggy. I don't know what it is. This story just isn't good. I don't understand. Maybe it'll be better with the animated version, but for right here, right now, the Macra Terror is one of the weakest stories of Doctor Who Season 4. It was I previously had it 6th on my list before starting at the season. I think 6th or around that spot. It's definitely 6th before I watched the story, but after this, I think it might have to go last. Or no, actually, no, that would be the Underwater Menace. It might be 8th then. It might have to go 8th. Which means it's worse than both of the historicals. So, historical stories, yeah, once again, actually, I think when we were watching the Highlanders, as I mentioned, kind of see why they kind of left. But as I mentioned with the Underwater Menace, with stories like that, and now the Macra Terror, we're kind of missing you. Okay? All's forgiven, historical stories. Can we have you back sooner than 1982, please? We're not even going to get a pseudo-historical until Equal to Daleks. Oh, okay, that's not too bad, I suppose. But the Macra Terror is just dull, and it's not that fun, and there's a couple of annoying characters. Mostly Ola, who I just really want to punch in the face, along with a couple of other characters, but him this time round. So, and they win in the end, and there's a celebration to end, and we have to wrap it up quickly. Don't even know what happens to Ola. I hope he got punched in the face by somebody off screen. I mean, he's probably got fired or something, but I would have preferred him to have seen his punishment. Okay, so the Macra Terror it's not Ian Stewart Black's worst script. I would say that's The Savages, but I'm not that fond of it. Hi, Nick here, just wanting to change my score for the Macra Terror. I gave it a 6 out of 10 after originally it was a 7 beforehand, and now I lowered it to a 6 after thinking about it and talking about it. But then after thinking about it a bit more, I actually gave it a 5. So I'm now going to give the Macra Terror a 5 out of 10. Yeah, that's disappointing, because I just wasn't so keen on this story, and I thought, actually, considering my opinions, 6 is actually slightly too high, and also I gave the Underwater Menace a 5, according to my list. So, I'm going to lower the Macra Terror to 5, and this is now currently second least favourite of my Season 4 ranking, so don't be surprised if that is the case. Yeah. However, it could still rise back to 7 or up to 6 with the animated version. We'll see. But at this point in time, it is a 5. Was 6, was 7 before that, but now it is a 5. And until I see the animated version at least once, that's how it's staying. Although I'll probably see it twice, maybe 3 times. I'm not sure how many times. At least once before the animated version review. Of course, it's got to be at least once, hasn't it? But maybe 2 or 3 times. We'll see. That review will probably come out sometime between the end of March and start of June. Start mid-June, depending. But yeah. But at this point in time, Macra Terror is a 5 out of 10 from me. So now back to me to wrap up the review, and the previous score clips will go in the bloopers. The funny thing is, I didn't really get that much backstory or reasons behind the Macras doing this stuff, apart from we can presume the gas helped, and the gas is their food and it helps them get stronger. And designs are pretty cool, just giant crabs, although most people keep referring to them as insects, in this story, but you can tell the giant crabs. I mean, nice design, and I'm sure the animated version is going to do a good job in redoing that. That's probably the best thing they'll do besides the backgrounds. If you look at Power of the Daleks, the best thing the BBC did there was the best things were the Daleks in the backgrounds. Sharda, I think they managed to do people a bit better. We'll see when we get back to that. But they didn't have to do the entire story there. They only had to do missing bits. There was more as the story went along, but not an entire 6-part story. This time it's only 4 parts, so it might not be too much to worry about. We'll see how it goes. The costumes themselves, they probably will look a bit naff today's comparison, but they still look impressive naff. But yeah, I just didn't get much of the backstory for the Macra, and besides needing gas for food, didn't really know what the point was. According to the Doctor, they're parasites and they infect colonies and stuff, and they've taken over this one. But that's about as far as we get. No, I actually think we got a bit more information about the Macra themselves in Gridlock, their second appearance. Nice surprise appearance, by the way. When that must have been the most surprising appearance of the since the Return of the Daleks and Bad Wolf, minus the Boomtown Next Time trailer. So mercifully, they did not include the Macra in the Next Time trailer at the end of Shakespeare Code. But the 10th Doctor talks about the Macra becoming empire builders, so he's obviously heard or read up about the Macra since this adventure, and by the time they are in New Earth, in the year 5 billion and 53, and they've infested the motorway in New York, then they become savages by this point. They're just animals wanting gas to survive. But yeah, I actually got more information about the Macra in a few lines of dialogue spoken by the 10th Doctor than anything we found out in this entire 4-parter. And nice CGI design of the Macra. They actually made them look smaller, to be honest, but then again, that must have been further distance away. But of course, when we got closer to them, big giant claws, which looks cool. So yeah, it was great to see the Macra back in Gridlock, and I hadn't even heard about the Macra when I first watched that story back in 2007, which would have been the 40th anniversary, I suppose. Yeah, the 40th anniversary, maybe even around the same time. Maybe a bit later, or a bit earlier. Maybe, I think it might have been March for the Macra Terror. I've got a book somewhere, it's down there. I think it was March 67 for the Macra Terror, and it was April 07 for Gridlock. But yeah, but like I said, I thought I got more about the Macra themselves from a few lines of dialogue in Gridlock than anything in their first story. Maybe there was some stuff in Expanded Media in between, but I don't think so. I don't think... Have Big Finish done the Macra yet? I don't think so. Then again, it'd probably be difficult to do giant crabs in audio. But then again, Gridlock managed to do it before you saw them. You managed to hear the roars, and you could probably hear the snapping. So, yeah, it's not impossible. If they can do it, Big Finish will do it. But that's about it. And also, just to clarify, when everyone in the story keeps going, there's no such thing as Macra, especially the Macra pretending to be the controller. By the way, that's a twist for the story. Might as well tell you now, this review's going on long enough. When everyone says there's no such thing as Macra, they always say it, they always seem to yell it, like, unconvincingly, especially towards the end when the Macra pretending to be the controller is, like, screaming, almost like he's frightened. But because he's the way the controller voice says there's no such thing as Macra, it's so clearly obvious that there is, because he's sounding so unconvincing with his panicking, frightened way and angry expression of it. It's so clearly obvious he is lying, because he's getting so frightened and angry about it. Whilst if you just say, oh, there's no such thing as Macra. Okay, that's a bit unconvincing. There's no such thing as Macra, that's just a story we tell. Okay, come on, Doctor, come on. Huh? Be reasonable. Something like that. Just normal speaking. Maybe you get angrier as the story goes along because you're getting fed up. But if you're doing something like, oh, there's no such thing as Macra! There's no such thing as Macra! Then you're going to look unconvincing. As would that version. But no one did that. They didn't even do it that normally. There was some raised voice. A little bit earlier on, but mostly either yells or raised voices at the very least. And then in part 4, the really panicking, frightening, screaming controller voice. Just going overboard, and he's like, and even Ben, just before he snaps out of it, he knows this controller sounds like someone who's losing control. So, yeah. He even mentions it. Nobody pays attention apart from the audience, but that's it. He notices, and it probably helps him realise that he's been brainwashed and snaps back in to help. He even tells the controller, as I mentioned, to shut up at the end. Thank God. Okay, so that's it from my review of the Macra Terror. That almost became a rant, but it's not bad enough to become a rant. No, I think the Romans and the Reign of Terror were closer to being rants. And maybe Missions Unknown to a lesser extent, but I just had to bring out a lot of bad points about this story. I thought Underwater Menace was worse, but I think this one comes very close to being second worst story of the season. I think Underwater Menace earned that position. This one just kind of fell down a hill by accident, whilst Underwater Menace was probably was bad from the get-go. This one just fell down a hill early on. Anyway, so that's it from me. Thank you for watching this review. I will probably do another review, maybe not as long, maybe even longer, on the main channel when the animated version comes out, see if my opinion changes on that. I'm going to have to watch it at least 3, maybe even 4 or 5 times. I'm probably going to get even more sick of it than Power of the Daleks after I had to watch that 5 times. I kind of, after a 6th viewing, but that viewing 5 to 6, there was a big gap, so I was fine with it. But 3, 4, 5, 6 viewings of the story in between March and, let's say, August. Although there might not be that many by the time I do the review, maybe 1 or 2 or 3. But say by August, at least, for reviews on the DVD, the Blu-ray and the Steelbook Blu-ray, I'll probably be very sick of it. So, yeah, that's just a warning. So the Crotons will say, this is a warning! God, I'm looking forward to that one. More than this one. So, but hopefully the animated version will be a little bit better. Even if it's still a 6 out of 10, hopefully the animation will make up for a bit of that. Heck, it might even go back to being a 7. Like how Sharda went from 8 to a 9, but because of the new animated version. But we'll see. Power of the Daleks is completely the same as is the Underwater Menaces, with its poor BBC reconstruction and the good loose cannon version. The story is still a 6 for that. So this is probably the longest review I've done on the Retro channel, and it's close to being very long, as long as some of the videos on the main channel. So I'm just going to wrap up and say thank you for watching this review of the Macra Terror. There'll be another one on the main channel in a few months' time, see how the animated version matches up, if it improves the story, or if it's staying exactly the same, or if it's even worse. Probably not, but we'll see. And next time, I will be looking at the Faceless ones, which I think, certainly from the list I had before jumping into this season, was my favourite of the season, with Evil the Daleks, the last story, being second. But we'll see how that happens. And also, if it is Malcolm Hulke, then it's probably my favourite Malcolm Hulke story, save for his involvement with Ambassadors of Death, possibly. We'll see. Then again, that also had that was mainly David Whittaker's story, and also had Trevor Ray helping out as well. So, but for Malcolm Hulke, either completely or credited co-writer, as we saw with the War Games, Faceless Ones is my favourite, or at least it was last time I checked it out. So let's check it out this time and see how it goes. And then it's the Evil the Daleks, which is the last Dalek story until 1972. How are we going to survive? Dalek stories were always the thing that helped to get me going for these stories when I started to get a bit tired of some of them, getting a bit bored, like looking forward to the next Dalek story. Even Mission to the Unknown kind of helped a little bit after Race and Morality. The good news is the story after the Evil of the Daleks is will be, when I get to it, my favourite of Doctor Who until we get to Tom Baker's era. And towards the end of, I would say, actually. So maybe the Cybermen stories will be the new Dalek stories in Patrick Troughton's era, something to look forward to when you start losing morale. Even if some of those other stories are fun and entertaining, but just dragging yourself through these long seasons, something to look forward to. And then after the last Patrick Troughton Sideman story, it's not terribly far from the end. I mean, something to take off morale would be the fact that the last two are, firstly, the penultimate is the worst of all time, and the last one is a 10-parter. Whoopee. So I think I might lose my morale by the end of Patrick Troughton's era, and then we might have a big break before jumping on to John Pertwee's, which we're thankfully Spearhead from Space is a good refresher. So that's it from me. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you guys next time for the Faceless Ones, which episodes 1 and 3 are available on this DVD but the rest are missing. Absolutely typical, isn't it? See you guys next time. Goodbye. Don't forget to click below to subscribe to the official Nicholas Payne Retro YouTube channel. As I was at the time of recording, I've had a bit of a snag. My computer's sound isn't working, so whenever I get round to editing this review, it'll probably be at some point later on. So, heck, by this, it might even be, the Macra Terror might even be out by this point. Hang on, I've got cold cheeks. So, yeah. So, yeah, but as I mentioned about my computer being having the problem with the sound at the moment, then that might be a long time for me at time of recording. Hopefully at time of release it might not be too bad. It won't be too bad. Anyway. Yeah, I'm struggling. Excuse me. So I'm going to give this story a 6 out of 10. I had it originally as a 7, but this rewatch, well, the rewatch actually made me keep it at 7, but talking about it, my distaste of it, it actually went lower, so this story is now a 6. We'll see if the animated version can make it go back to 7, but at this point, it's a 6 out of 10. Is their food, and you can they get stronger and stuff, and there's more, sorry. Anyway, that's enough. I've probably taken up the most amount of... This is probably the longest review I've done on the Retro channel so far. Let me check. Yes. When my computer's sound is fixed... Okay, I've talked enough now. This has gone on long enough. I'm probably going to get sick of myself and so review. So that's about it. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you guys next time for the faceless ones. Goodbye. That's it. Done. So that's it from me. Sorry.